Welcome to the webinar. Today's topic is processing non-sufficient fund checks in Vision or myUnity. When you have a check that gets returned from the bank for non-sufficient funds, do not remove or modify the original payment. Instead, enter a new negative payment with the date the check was returned. This process ensures that your cash will balance and leaves a clean audit trail. The original payment was part of a deposit and should not be removed. The returned check happened on another date and should be processed as a separate transaction. Here is our payment log for our IL showing our June 1st deposit, and a few days later on June 4th we got notice from the bank that Mo Carson's check has been returned for non-sufficient funds. So I now need to debit Mo Carson's account for the amount of the check. To do this, we don't do anything with the original check. So we don't need to go to adjustments, we don't need to remove a check, we're just going to enter a new check. So we'll go into Vision, go to Financial and Payments, add new batch, when entering a check for non-sufficient funds, you do need to use the Payment Checks tab. If you have been entering NSF checks and using the payment line entry application and you haven't had any problems, it's all right to continue doing that. We have found that using payment line entry sometimes shows strange numbers when you view your payment journal. So we now recommend using the payment checks format. When you enter your check number, you should enter the letters NSF and then the original check number. I can go back to my payment log and get the original check number, which was 8765. So I'm going to enter NSF 8765. The date received should be the date that the check was returned from the bank. It's the date that the money was taken back out of our account. And we received notice on June 4th. Now going to enter the check amount as a negative. And then select Save Check. The date received is especially important if it should happen to cross over a month end. For example, you deposited the check on May 31st and it did not get returned until June 3rd. Your deposits for the month of May need to include that check so that your cash will balance. And then since the money came back out in June, you need to make sure that your June cash will balance with having that check subtracted. On the bottom half of the screen, you'll complete it just like you do when you're normally applying payments. So you would put an old date here through the date of your most current revenue. Summarized by should be admission. And then you can search for the resident. Here it brings up a zero balance, and that's because when Mo paid and we took his check, that brought his balance down to zero. He had paid it in full. But now that the check was returned, we need to apply this negative payment. Now if you put a check mark next to the balance, nothing happens. It doesn't apply the negative amount. You have to actually enter it manually. And then submit. you'll see that the net amount left of the check goes to 0. Remember that that net amount left should always be 0 anytime you're using the payment checks format. Down here, it's showing that the resident will have a balance when this payment is posted. So if his balance was 0, we're applying a negative payment. That's going to make his balance be this $58.38.18. Let's click Edit Payments. We do have the message that this payment will have an open credit. And that's because the resident's balance was 0. Everything was paid off, and it doesn't have any place to apply this amount to. So this is okay. It's okay to have an open credit as long as you don't have a message that's saying the check was not fully dispersed. I'm going to now post this batch. View my payment journal. Print it. And return to Vision. I can now run a new payment log. The new payment log shows Mo Carson's original payment. And then down below on June 4th, here's the NSF check number. And the payment is a negative, which takes the amount back out of my total so that my check amount will match with the bank deposits. Also, when Mo Carson gets his next invoice, let's go ahead and create that. Those were June payments, so they would be reflected on his June invoice. What is also nice about this process is on the resident's invoice, it shows the original payment as a payment and a credit. Then it shows the second payment with the check number NSF because we entered it that way. And then the payment is a charge rather than a credit. And it would show the same way on the aging patient invoice. To review, when you are processing a check that has been returned from the bank for non-sufficient funds, do not remove or modify the original payment. Instead, enter a new negative payment with the date the check was returned. This ensures that your cash will balance and it leaves a clean audit trail. Thank you for joining our webinar. Please also view our other instructional videos on our YouTube channel.